Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined as always by Scott Bogman and by Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, we are talking about our trade value chart, which was recently updated here. We updated on the first or around the first of every single month all year long. Some fun updates this month. We added tight end premium values. We added some 2027 pick values. So we can dive into a little bit of that here as we start looking at some of the values. But what we're really going to do is look at some players that we agree with or disagree with on the chart as we sit here in early June, a few months away still from the season. Fitz, this is a version of a show that you and I do for the Discord audience once a month already. We're now kind of sending it out to the larger audience and, of course, bringing Bogman into our conversation.
Yeah, always kind of good to just, it's a good way to sort of, I don't know, give ourselves a refresh every month and talk about players whose status might have changed for one reason or another, players we've reevaluated when we're looking at the trade value chart.
Not the busiest month for changes on the chart, June. There's not a ton that happens from May to June, but I think it's still really informative to look at some of these values. And, you know, this is a collaborative effort. So individual folks are going to have, you know, certain players that we think differently about and think are, you know, like we've done some overvalued, undervalued lately. This is kind of the same thing relative to that chart. Bogman, that's how you were kind of laying it out. We were talking about the show beforehand. How are you feeling going into this episode? Were there a lot of names that you felt you disagreed with and you had to narrow it down, or was it kind of easy to pick who you wanted to talk about?
I had disagreements, but I think the disagreements are basically the things that most people know about me at this point, right? Like I had Cam Scatterboo way higher than the trade value chart had him. I have a couple other players that, you know, familiar names a lot, but there were some that surprised me as well. Especially since, you know, I love looking at the Dynasty trade value chart because it gives you a sense of what public perception would be on a player. Maybe your perception is completely different, but this kind of shows you what the market is saying about how much this guy should be worth. So it's nice to go through it and pick through and see, you know, who has lower opinions in general than what you have, so you can potentially get a deal done that looks nice for you if you're making a good predictive movement like my guy Cam Scatterboo. So I think it's a great exercise to do, especially at this point in the year.
As a reminder for everybody, all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can navigate to the Dynasty rankings from there as well. And then if you just Google Fantasy Pros Dynasty Trade Value Chart, you will find it. You can also try and navigate the site to find it too, but Google works just as well to see our latest update. Like we said, we just updated a few days ago here as we sit in early June. I want to talk before we dive into the players just very briefly because we did add some of these pick values, and Fitz and I talked about this on the Discord version of the show. So I want to ask you, Bogman. We normally have only had this year's rookie pick values and the following year. We added 2027. Fitz and I talked about how it's really interesting that usually the closer you are to a year, the more value those picks hold. It's less time to wait, less uncertainty about what that class will look like. Obviously, when you're a year plus out, there's going to be a degree of uncertainty regardless. But the further out you are, the more uncertainty there is. And of course, there's longer you have to wait. Having said that, our 2027 pick values, especially at the top, are considered more valuable than 2026 right now. Do you see it that way as well, where next year's class is maybe a step down from what's coming a year later?
I'll say that I do think that is the case as it stands right now, because there isn't, you know, a certain striking name that has to be number one overall. You know, even in Superflex, Arch right now, maybe he comes out, maybe he doesn't. So if he doesn't, are there going to be this glut of other quarterbacks, right? We know value changes a lot, especially in a full college football season. So I'll say it's interesting that 27 has some higher values, right? Because the class is considered better, but a lot can change between now and then. So I think it's so hard to pinpoint the value of those picks. And I think in general, almost every pick is going to be overvalued because it's the mystery box. You know, it's that clip from Family Guy. Like, you know, you want the boat or you want the box? I want the box. It could be anything, even a boat, you know. So I do think that there's a little bit of that mixed in with picks, because you just don't know. Like, maybe this is going to be really good next year. It just doesn't look as good right now. So But in general, I'm with Fitz, and I think Fitz has probably driven the price of those 2027 picks up, because every time we bring up that class, he's super excited for it.
By the way, you missed my favorite part of that Family Guy quote, which is the last line where he's like, it could be anything. It could even be a boat. We've always wanted one of those. Fitz, we could go briefly on this because we talked about this, but for those who missed the Discord show, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, possibly Arch Manning, there's a reason the 2027 picks are pretty sought after in leagues that are looking ahead right now.
Yeah, and deeper than that, DJ Lagway, Dylan Raiola. Like, it could be a good class pretty much across the board at every position, just looking at it. So Bugman's right, a lot of things could change, but as of now, like, I think the 2027 class is looking significantly stronger than the 2026 class. So that's why, even though there's an extra year of waiting for those picks, I think we're still justified in giving those values. Mainly it's at the top of the first round, because there are going to be some certified studs there, like Jeremiah Smith. I'm pretty confident Jeremiah Smith is still going to be a very, very, very coveted pick in 2027.
It would be an injury, right? Like for him and Ryan Williams, but it's 2 years of playing football, so that could definitely happen. So it'd have to be, but exactly what Fitz said, like the studs at the top push normal first round values to the back end of the first or the early second. So every pick is worth more when you have a glut of studs up at the front.
What I would say is, in terms of like applicable advice with this, is just if you are not a win now team, I would say like check around, see if anybody in your league who's not maybe looking that far ahead. There are a lot of dynasty leagues where folks are a little more on the casual side, or at the very least are not looking multiple years ahead, and gauge interest. Say, hey, I don't really want to make a pick in 2026. I'm looking to rebuild. What would you think about switching? You can get 2 in 2026. I'll take 2 in 2026. Just ask around, see what kind of options there are. If you are talking to a win now team and maybe they'll be rebuilding by then, that pick looks a lot better. So worth looking at that. Let's look at our values here. We'll start with quarterback, just because that is kind of the most natural place to start. We do have on the chart kind of a different column. We have normal 1 QB league and then a super flex value league. I shouldn't say normal, because more leagues it feels like are super flex than our 1 QB, but we have kind of both values in the quarterback section. It looks like what you would imagine it looks like, especially at the top. Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson are kind of in a tier of their own in terms of the value. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, kind of, you could loop Patrick Mahomes into there as kind of the next tier. A whole bunch of folks from about QB 7 to QB 13 ish that are all really highly rated. When you're looking at this, Fitz, who is the quarterback that you most disagree with or really agree with? We nailed it in terms of where they stand on the trade value chart right now.
I think it's Baker Mayfield, and I love watching Baker play. He has become a quality NFL quarterback, but I do think he's a bit overvalued on our charts. His super flex value is 74, and that's the same as Jahmyr Gibbs. It's slightly below the value of like Brian Thomas Jr. and Puka Nacua. Like, obviously the quarterback position is hugely important in super flex leagues, but like Baker Mayfield is 30 years old. And I know he was good in 2023 and great in 2024, but last season's numbers probably aren't repeatable. He had 41 touchdown passes last year. He had never thrown even 30 in a single season. Also ran for a career high 378 yards. Had never run for 200 yards in any previous year. So, but I do get the appeal. Like, he's clearly turned a corner in his career. The Buccaneers are absolutely stacked at wide receiver with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Emeka Egbuka and Jalen McMillan. Tampa is one of the better offensive lines in the league. I would get it if Mayfield were 25 or 26 years old. Like, I could get on board with the current value, but at age 30, I think he's mispriced, and I think I'm going to advocate a downward adjustment when we do our next review of the trade value chart. Oh, and I forgot to mention, like, Mayfield's also getting another new play caller.
Right.
Like, he has lost Dave Canales and Liam Cohen in back-to-back years. And maybe the transition from Cohen to 34-year-old Josh Grizzard won't be that bad. Maybe it'll be seamless because Grizzard was the passing game coordinator for the Bucs last year. But then again, this guy's never been an offensive coordinator in the NFL before.
It's not just to his numerical value and how that relates to other positions. Even another one, for example, like he's more valued than Brock Bowers in non-tight end premium and in a super flex league. I would think I would rather have Bowers than Mayfield, but it's also just relative to the other quarterbacks that he's around. I mean, he's ahead of the guys immediately lower in value than him. Kyler Murray, Michael Penix, Jared Goff, Cam Ward, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Bryce Young. I'm not saying that he has to be behind all those guys, but I think you can make compelling cases for a lot of them, if not maybe even all of them, as having at least a case to be ahead of Baker Mayfield in terms of dynasty value. And he's, kind of several spots ahead of them, at least in terms of the numerical value, a few of those guys. Bogman, what do you think about Baker Mayfield coming in as QB 16 and that numerical value in the chart?
Yeah, what's funny is the reason I didn't have Baker Mayfield on my list is because, again, Fitz got to the list before I did, because just in terms of points, I just went and looked at ECR where the points are. He was the one that I had the biggest discrepancy on, because he is listed at QB 16 on this chart. I have him at 21. I have him below all the guys that you just listed off, Worm. So I'm right there with you. And it's nothing to do with Baker Mayfield and his talent. Obviously, the guy has taken a huge step up. The offense is built around him and his strengths, right? And they just added Emeka Egbuka. So, like, if you're drafting for this season, Baker Mayfield is a great asset to have. He's on the run side of 30. The play callers are different now, 3 seasons in a row. And it's just what he did last year is not what he has had in his bag statistically throughout his career. So I'm with Fitz in the fact that I think he's just a little bit overrated. But this year and next year might be really, really good for him still. But, Father Time never loses. So eventually that shoe's going to drop.
One of those names I listed after him is your pick here, Bogman, and that's Justin Fields.
Yeah, and he is one that I have a big discrepancy on as well. Currently QB 22. I have him at 17, which is about a 14-point difference if you're looking at the chart.
You basically want to flip Baker and Fields.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Fields, I still think, has not had a fair shake, right? He had bad coaches in Chicago. We know that now. Obviously, it was terrible there. He goes to Pittsburgh. He gets a bad OC and Arthur Smith. He has the job. The Steelers are playing well, and then the job is ripped away from him. So I still don't know that Justin Fields has necessarily had a fair shake. Now, you go to New York, you implode, you're terrible again, then sure, yeah, you've had 3 different stops, and eventually it's you and not the system. So this is the last chance, I feel like, for him, but maybe not. We saw Sam Darnold, again, remember, his 5th team is where he got his huge contract. But I do like what Tanner Ingtron said about him. Fields, this was his quote, Fields' dual threat ability just opens things up more. That's all. It just adds another layer to what we can do with where we're going on offense. So, you look at that and you just look at the top of this list, Worm, right? Like, it's all running QBs. Fields is an incredible running quarterback. So if they let him do it with all these great running backs in New York, and he should have, a decent passing season. The targets aren't fantastic, but I expect the Jets to be down in a lot of games. They're still a rebuilding team, so garbage time counts for this year. But I have him ahead of guys like Penix and Ward and Goff. Goff's a little bit older. I have him ahead of some of those guys just because I think the rushing upside is way more than Ward or Penix. So I just think he's a little bit low on the trade value chart. And if you can go snap him up, I think I would.
Fitz, what do you make of Fields?
Well, here's the thing, Boggs. Like, I'm pretty confident Penix and Ward are going to be starters in the league 2 years from now. Like, I don't know that with Fields. And that's the thing. I know you could make the case he hasn't gotten a fair shake, but the Bears decided after 3 years he wasn't their guy. And yes, they had a golden opportunity to make a QB change since they held the number 1 overall pick, thanks to a bad trade the Panthers made with the Bears. So, but still the Bears decided they would rather, look behind door number 3 and start over at quarterback than stick with Fields. And, the Steelers had Fields for 1 year. They benched him in favor of Russell Wilson after 6 starts, even though he wasn't playing poorly. Like, Fields had he had the Steelers at 4-2 after those 6 games. And the Steelers then didn't make any real effort to re-sign Fields after the season. And it's not like they had a good alternative close at hand. I mean, the Steelers have Mason Rudolph sitting at the top of their depth chart right now, quarterback. And the other possibility is 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. But on the other hand, yes, like Fields was a top 10 fantasy quarterback while he was playing last year. He was QB6 for the Bears in 2022, which was the year he ran for 1,100 yards. It's easy to see the upside, but the reason why I think he's pretty fairly valued on our trade charts, or at least close to it, is that it's just really hard to say with confidence that he's going to be a starting NFL QB 2 years from now, or even 1 year from now, for that matter.
I agree with that. He is a risk, but I'll ask you this. If all three of Fields, Ward, and Penix are starting 3 years down the road, who would you rather have?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fields is going to be, because of the running ability, like Fields.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
question.
and that's why I think he's just, he's worth a little bit more than public opinion right now, is because if he starts down, ifs and buts and candies and nuts, all of that, right? It's hard to take something that seems guaranteed like Ward or Penix over Fields. But again, Fields was in that group before. He was a very high pick in the NFL draft, and these guys keep getting shots until they prove over and over they can't do it. And, I think this is it for Fields, but you never know.
I mean, I like him a lot for redraft, just for Dynasty, just because I'm not very certain about his future. And I don't know.
Sorry to cut you off, Fitz. I was going to ask, when you're looking at Fitz, thinking about the future and the risk with a guy like Fields, and we talked a little bit about this with Anthony Richardson also earlier this week. I know that the way our chart works is you have the 1 QB ranking, and then it just goes up in Superflex. Those guys who have that added risk, though, I feel like I would rather have them in 1 QB, where getting a difference maker is more important. In Superflex, I'm maybe less interested in a guy like Richardson or Fields, because
you want the floor.
If the downside hit, if you fall to the floor, then you are in a much worse position than if those guys fail in 1 QB, you can find another quarterback. If they fail in Superflex, you might be tanking for a year because you don't have a second guy.
Right. Yeah. It's easy to trade for a quarterback in 1 QB Superflex, not so much in 2 QB, Superflex Dynasty. Like, it's just not, because you always want 3 starters, and you don't sleep comfortably if you don't have 3 starters in Dynasty. That's just how it is. And if you have Justin Fields, you have to worry if he's going to still be a starter a year from now.
So there are actually 4 players, just one at each position, who has the exact same value of 55, which is Fields. So Bogman, let me ask you this: who would you rather have? Justin Fields in a Superflex, Devonta Smith at receiver, Quinshon Judkins at running back, or Tyler Warren in a tight end premium league? Those guys all have the exact same value. Who do you like best?
Probably Devonta Smith. I think that he's just, I think he's a stud.
Where would Fields fall in that ranking for you?
Probably second, if we're talking Superflex, just because, running back is finicky. I have Quinshon Judkins a little bit overrated on my list. I think a lot of rookies are overrated on the value chart, obviously. Just the shiny new toy. Everybody wants him. So I think that's it. And then Warren is just so, you talk about risk. He's a huge risk. They don't have anybody to throw him the football. So, as of right now. So Warren at the bottom of the list. But yeah, I would probably put Devontae, then Fields, and Judkins, and Warren.
Who else stands out to you here, Fitz, just amongst the quarterback position on the chart? I think it's really interesting looking at like that QB 7 to 15 range. There's a pretty wide gap between Herbert at QB 7, who's 96 value, and Trevor Lawrence is a 76 value down at QB 15. But these names, Herbert, Stroud, May, Caleb, Love, Nix, Purdy, JJ, and Lawrence, like, you could convince me of those guys finishing in any order this upcoming season, and then this value looking a lot different next year. And it's kind of like a really key area if you're in a dynasty league, because the guys at the top, are at the top ahead of them. And the guys after, you're mostly just taking swings and hoping for upside. Those guys, I think, will determine a lot of leagues this year in Superflex formats. And I know the values we have is like a wide gap between the top and bottom, but I see that as somewhat flat.
Yeah. And Jordan Love is a name that kind of stands out in there. I think he might be a smidge overvalued too. And I say this as a Packers fan who's really come around on Love. I didn't like the drafting of him in the first round a few years ago when they still had Aaron Rodgers. But I just wonder, he took a little bit of a step back last year. He's not super young anymore, and the Packers were really run heavy. But then again, maybe they were run heavy because Jordan Love sprained his MCL in week 1 and, kind of played at not 100% for a few weeks. And then the Packers just kind of found something with their running game and were really good at it. But still, I don't know if he quite deserves to be at the level he's at. The super flex value is 83, and that's higher than like some of the top wide receivers.
Who stands out to you, Bogman?
Yeah, I have a couple guys that lower valued. I'm a little bit lower on CJ Stroud. It would be like a 10-point difference. I have him at QB 11. Currently, he's at QB 8. We mentioned Baker. I just straight up don't believe in Tyler Shuck. So right now, he's QB 32, 31 points. I have him closer to a career backup at QB 37, which would be 19 points. So don't believe in him. And then guys that I think are underrated, I still think Anthony Richardson's worth a little bit more. I think this is kind of the, overcorrection that we have, right? Yes, they did bring in Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson looked terrible last season. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you, like, I think Fields is pretty safe as a starter for this year and next year. I have no confidence in Anthony Richardson, but I think the upside is still so huge that I'm just a little bit higher on him. Currently, he's a QB3 on a trade value chart. I have him more as a low-end QB2. And Bo Nix was the one I had the biggest difference in. Like you said, there's a big glut there between 7 and 15, which I completely agree with. And I have Bo Nix at 7. So I just have him higher. I think he proved last year that he's way better than what we thought going in. Didn't have great weapons, specifically in the run game next to him. So we add RJ Harvey in there, get him some more targets as well. I think he's an ascending star. So, and then Joe Milton, I think is, he's already been traded for, and Dak is a little bit long in the tooth. So I like him as at least a handcuff for Dak now. So, Nix, Richardson, Milton, underrated. Stroud, Mayfield, Shuck are my overrateds.
You can evaluate trades with confidence using FantasyPros Trade Analyzer, instantly see the impact of trades on your team, and get expert recommendations, whether you're making a 2-for-1 deal or swapping a couple draft picks for that stud who will help you win now. The Trade Analyzer will help you optimize your roster and make smarter decisions. Try the Trade Analyzer today at fantasypros.com/myplaybook and dominate your league. Guys, let's go to the running backs. Fitz, who stands out to you that you disagree with their value?
So our running back values all looked pretty good to me, like pretty tight. Every time I saw value and sort of questioned it, I would compare that player to a similarly valued player at another position and decide, yeah, that looks about right. But I did have this thought, and I'll be curious to see whether you guys agree with me on this. So we've got a value of 14 for Dylan Sampson. Like that's the same value we have for Jonathan Brooks, who's now had 2 ACL tears in the same knee over the last year and a half. We have Dylan Sampson valued lower than fellow rookie Savion Williams, who's sort of a mystery box guy. We don't know how Savion is going to fit into an NFL offense. We have Dylan Sampson valued 1 point higher than receivers like Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Palmer, guys who are like wide receiver 6 types on your dynasty roster. And yes, Dylan Smith's landing spot was not ideal. Like not only are the Browns rebuilding, not only do they have major questions at the all-important quarterback position, but they also took another running back before Dylan Sampson, Quinshon Judkins. And they still have Jerome Ford on the roster, a capable veteran. But man, like Dylan Sampson was a 4th-round pick, which is pretty decent draft capital considering how stacked the running back class was this year. And Sampson is just a really interesting prospect. Blazing fast, great lateral agility, surprisingly effective between the tackles for a smaller guy. Pretty good in the passing game, even as a blocker. Like I like Dylan Sampson as a prospect much more than I liked fellow Tennessee guy Jalen Wright. So I wonder if we're slightly undervaluing like not only Sampson, but maybe some of the other rookie running backs from this great class who landed in crowded backfields, like Jarquez Hunter of the Rams. His value is slightly higher than Sampson's, and Jordan James of the 49ers, whose value is slightly lower than Sampson's.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sampson's a good pick. He's outside the top 50, and I think that's wrong. Just because I think the upside is really appealing if he gets an opportunity. Like I would just frankly, I'd rather have Sampson than Blake Corum at this point after a year, and now that backfield's even more crowded. And Corum's, valued at a 17. Sampson's at a 14. Corum's 8 spots higher. Like I think that's wrong. I was really intoxicated with Sampson during the draft process. Also, like even prior to seeing the landing spot, I really liked him. And the opportunity will be tricky, but I think the fit is actually really nice if he were to get an opportunity in this offense. So I think it's a great call, and I think you could have listed 5 more rookie running back names. Honestly, Fitz and at least made a compelling case for them. Some of the other guys even just around him are guys like DJ Giddens, Woody Marks is a little below him. Jaden Blue is 1 spot ahead of him. So I think there's a lot of names that are really interesting in that range. Bogman, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I brought up Sampson on our Undervalued show, so I feel like maybe I incepted Fitzy a little bit on this one. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't a Sampson guy going into the draft, right? And the more I looked at him, he kind of seemed like Devin Singletary, but Devin Singletary's been in the league forever, and he's ruined a lot of RB seasons that have upset us before. So I think Sampson is definitely one of those guys. I also compared the situation to Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams being drafted the same year by the Packers. Both good running backs, but it's pretty clear Aaron Jones was better and had the run much quicker. So those guys were both went ahead of, or I think Sampson and Judkins both went ahead of Williams and Jones. But the point remains. And, I think this is a point where I think some of these rookies are undervalued. I think Giddens is undervalued. I think Cam Scatterboo is undervalued as well. But, this offense in Cleveland, they can't pass the ball. They have no quarterback. They're going to run the ball 8 million times. So it's not going to just be Judkins. And we saw him work pretty well with the back last season at Ohio State. So I think this is a smart move by the Browns. And I think it's a smart move investing in Sampson because he's so cheap right now.
Bogman, sticking with you, you've got another rookie running back.
I do, but I think he's overvalued, and that's Bhayshul Tuten, who I like, and I like way more than Sampson going into this draft. But currently at RB 28, I have him at 40, and I'm more than willing to say that I like Tuten's talent. I think he was underrated going into the draft, but this team still has ETN and Bigsby, right? And we also heard Cohen shut down rumors about ETN potentially getting traded, which, that could be coach speak, but it wasn't just, okay, so you have ETN, you have Bigsby there. We all think that ETN has been disappointing in his NFL career. I don't think there's an argument against that. But we just talked about Justin Fields not getting a fair shake. I don't know that ETN is more fair than Fields, but I don't know that he has had a really fair shake either. It's been Urban Meyer and the Doug Peterson experiment there. So I don't really like what the Jaguars have had, which is why I'm excited to see what Trevor Lawrence has in a real offensive system this year under Liam Cohen. Bigsby led this team in carries. He also drafted LaQuint Allen as well. So it's 4 backs on the roster if you're not trading ETN. I just think it's going to be split up weirdly. It doesn't mean that Tuten can't win this job and be the primary ball carrier. And, obviously things lean towards him because he was hand selected by the new regime. I understand that. I just think making him RB 28, like a high end RB 3, as a flex play or like your first guy off the bench, I think depending on him in that, it's just a little premature to do that. So I have guys like Connor and Brian Robinson and even Najee Harris and Rashad White and Ray Davis, some guys that I know are backups over him still, because I'm just not 100% certain that he is going to come in and dominate touches and be this big upside swing guy. So I like him. Again, a guy that I like more than Sampson going in, but I think this landing spot just doesn't have me very excited about him, and I think he's a bit overrated right now.
Fitz, what do you think about Tuten's value? It's at a 31. So just kind of looking around, like in Superflex, that'd be like a Shedeur Sanders. If you look at the receivers, a 31 is the range of like a Keon Coleman, Josh Downs, Cortland Sutton, a little higher than Calvin Ridley. Looking at tight ends, it's like Kyle Pitts actually in non-tight end premium is a 31. Does that seem right to you, or do you agree that this is an overvaluing?
So I think I agree with Bogman. I don't have as much of an issue with this value as he does. Boggs, you said you have Tuten RB40 in Dynasty?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm at RB30, below consensus, but above Bogman. So it wouldn't shock me if like his value was 50% higher a year from now. And he was right with Caleb Johnson, who we currently have at like 47 or 48. But yeah, I kind of agree that, well, for one thing, Tuten's a smaller back who's probably always going to have a tag team partner in whatever backfield he's in. And the backfield he's currently in is really messy, as Bogman noted. Even though he is the handpicked guy of the new regime, even though Travis Etienne walks, his contract expires after this year. So I do agree. The other thing, I feel like everyone is double counting Bhayshul Tuten's speed. Like the reason he was sort of on people's radar going into draft season was because like he was really explosive and you could see it on tape and when you watched his games. Then he goes out and runs that crazy 40 time at the combine and like everyone's super high on him and putting him right below that top group of running backs, right below the Caleb Johnsons and Quinshon Judkinses. And I just like, I mean, I'd still rather have Cam Scadaboo, and I am not the president of the Cam Scadaboo fan club like Bogman is. But like, yeah, I think his production profile was better. And, you know, Tuten does have that ace up his sleeve with the speed. Like that's a great tool and it's going to make him a contributor for probably years to come. But I do think he's getting maybe steamed up a little bit too high.
Well, Travis Etienne or him?
Oh, Tuten, man. Like Etienne was just bad last year. And I don't know what has happened to him since midway through the 2023 season, but like his rushing yards per carry over expected was underwater last year. Negative. Like he earned fewer yards than were expected of him last year. That's a really bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have them at 38 and 40. I have ETN just a little bit higher. I was just bigger on ETN coming out. Obviously, it hasn't worked out, but again, I don't think he's had a fair shake. That could be completely wrong. I think the nice thing about Tuten is the floor, like, you know, because okay, let's put him next to Bigsby and say he's the 2. All right, he's still got Jalen Warren upside. That's an RB3 for sure. So I have him right in that range within striking distance, but I want to see it first. I'm not completely convinced that Tuten is going to come in and take over this backfield. I think Bigsby still leads this team in carries at the end of the year.
So let's look at the top of the position a little bit, because we obviously we're mostly kind of focusing on the guys in that RB3 and beyond range with your picks. Is there anybody, Bogman, near the top of the position that kind of stands out to you as being ranked in the wrong place? Like I think Quinshon Judkins might be a little overvalued here as the 11th highest valued running back right now.
I have him in Henderson both a little bit high. And I
Uh-huh.
like them both a lot. I have Henderson at 15. I have Judkins at 16. Currently, they're at 10 and 11. So I think, you know, still, I just don't have them as RB1s yet. You know what I mean? Could they be in there by the end of the season? 100%. Absolutely. But I also don't think that it would be, for Henderson specifically, I don't think it'd be crazy to see Ramondre Stevenson have like one more really good year. Right? Didn't look good at the end of last year, so probably not. It's probably a Henderson show, but it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world.
Henderson has the advantage of most dynasty leagues are PPR, where I think he'll
Yes,
be very helpful.
for sure. Judkins, like, they just have to have a running back. Like, so there's no one really pushing him outside of Sampson, who we mentioned before. But I think both those guys a little overrated. I have a little underrated on. I'm still just such a big JT fan. I have him at 6. Currently his value is 9. So, but that's a value difference of like 6 points. It's really not that big a deal because there's so like the up at the top, there's still a lot of good running backs. Cook, I'm a little bit higher on, but my difference was only like 3 points. Same thing with Kyron. I'm a little bit higher on him, but the difference was 4 points. Right. So not anything major at the top for me in terms of huge differences. I think, I think Tuten is probably my biggest RB difference. I think RB values are pretty good here for the most part.
What do you think, Fitz? Kind of looking in the same range. I mean, we know you love Chase Brown. Generally speaking, he's RB12, value of 53. It's tied with Jacobs and Kenneth Walker. I know you loved Hampton coming into the draft, and obviously the fit looks really good long term. But this is a running back. Running backs tend to have limited shelf lives. He's a physical runner, so you worry about the hits he takes. And if you're kind of throwing out year one because of Najee, I mean, to some degree, saying he'll be limited to year one in terms of the opportunity, not necessarily throwing out. I shouldn't have phrased it like that. RB6 maybe is a little high for him. I mean, looking at this range, who would you maybe move around?
The only reason I wonder about Hampton's value is because we have no doubt he's going to get a lot of carries for Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. I just wonder how many catches he's going to get and whether he can have that top level dynasty value, since dynasty leagues tend to be full point PPR, and Greg Roman offenses typically do not funnel a lot of targets to the running backs. Bucky Irving is the one that I wonder about. I know there's almost been kind of like a Bucky backlash among some people on Twitter. And I don't know, to me, it's just seeing is believing. He was spectacular last year. And I know like someone on our Discord, I think, was kind of arguing and saying, or maybe it was Twitter, that, it's a Rachaad White bounce back here this year. I'm like, they kicked Rachaad White to the curb last year because Bucky
really
was
did.
Clearly better. And I mean, Bucky, I believe, among all running backs with at least 60 carries, so basically anyone who made any significant contribution as a running back last year, he led everyone in yards after contact per carry. Like, Bucky was sensational when he got any catches, passes. That's a terrific offense with a really good offensive line. Like, I'm just totally sold. So, but then I look at him and he's got the same value as Garrett Wilson. And I don't know if that's right. And let me ask you guys, who would you rather have, Bucky Irving or, in a non-tight end premium, Trey McBride? Who's the more valuable fantasy?
I'd rather have McBride easily.
Really?
Yeah,
I would,
not
but
easily for me, but I would rather have McBride.
I would, but I also just will. Like, I think the gap between McBride and every non-Bowers tight end is pretty wide. Like, I really love the idea of just having him locked up for the next decade. And it's not, I don't say that to fade Bucky. I do wonder if RB7 is maybe a little high after 1 year for him.
I've got McBride at 28 and Bucky at 30. So it is very close for me in like just a regular PPR dynasty.
Yeah. I think Bucky's a really interesting test case. We talk a lot about pedigree and draft capital, but then also we talk about seeing is believing, and you don't want to just like totally be too stuck with your priors. I do kind of personally like would want to see it another year before I put him this high. Like, I think Bucky obviously should be valued much more highly than he was a year ago. Like, I'm not saying that last year was a fluke or some outlier in his career, but I see the case for Jonathan Taylor maybe should be still ahead of him, or Breece Hall if you still believe in the talent. Like, I would rather have Chase Brown this year than Bucky. I think 7 just feels maybe a little aggressive, even though the nature of the position is it kind of is a transient position in terms of dynasty value. It changes a lot, and he's coming off a great year, so I understand why he's there. But it's a position that shakes up a lot year after year in terms of dynasty value. Just the nature of the beast.
And I will say,
I have him at 9.
I think that people who had Bucky Irving on their dynasty teams last year probably do not think RB7 is too aggressive for him.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably won them some money last year, right?
Yeah, he was dynamite down the stretch and in that playoff run.
Really
he was terrific.
Yeah, he's a good running back. I do not say that. First of all, I just really love Trey McBride on that example you use. By the way, did you answer? Who would you take, Fitz, McBride, or?
I'd rather have Bucky than Trey McBride.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to diss McBride. He's terrific too, but yeah, I'd rather have Bucky.
I think Trey McBride might finish his tight end one this year. Like, if he gets the regression on the touchdowns,
the TDs,
I'm just, I know some guys just have an allergy to the end zone, and maybe that's him, but I think McBride is such a good player. I do want to let everybody know that this month, if you want a chance to win a signed George Pickens Steelers jersey, which is now vintage, for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any video, and that is it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Bogman, even though he's no longer in Pittsburgh, would you want a George Pickens Steelers jersey?
Well, why don't we just jump here, right? Because look who I have as my undervalued wide receiver.
So
Is
that's
George
called
Pickens.
a segue right there. That's
Right there,
we're
exactly.
professionals.
Yeah, look, I have him at wide receiver 19, and currently he's wide receiver 35 on the trade value chart. And let's just list the quarterbacks that George Pickens has played with in his career, gentlemen, shall we? Pickett, Trubisky, Rudolph, Fields, and Wilson. That is the group of QBs that he has had. And last season, George Pickens, top 25 in receiving grade, 21st in ADOT, 20th in missed tackles forced among wide receivers, 23rd in yards per route run. And the Steelers, 29th in pass attempts in 24, 27th in 23, 16 in his rookie season. Lamb is going to be in Dallas taking number 1 DBs. And they really haven't had a good guy next to Lamb since his rookie season. And really, I mean, his first 2 seasons, he had Cooper. It was, Cooper was really good in 2020. Cooper was banged up in 2021. And then it was Noah Brown and Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert the last 3 years, which is why I have another guy overvalued on this list we'll talk about a little bit later that maybe saw an inflated target role here. So I just think that with Lamb taking number 1 DBs, what I have seen from Pickens, and let's just take the mental mistakes that he has in his attitude away. Just as a pure football player, I think Pickens is a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. I think his talent is incredible. I think he lands in a spot with a really good quarterback in Dak Prescott, and we could see his numbers soar very quickly. So I'm just going to be much higher on Pickens and what most people were. And if you guys remember going into the draft before he was a Steeler, I was very high on George Pickens. Obviously, a little bit of issues between the ears and attitude maybe, but the talent is impeccable. He really is a great player. So if he can get straight with a good quarterback in Dallas with a number 1 option taking, the number 1 DB away from that team, I think Pickens could be in for a huge year. So I'm excited about Pickens, and I want that jersey, Worm. Give it to me.
I was going to say, you're ducking the real question here about the jersey, but
I want it. Give it to me. I'll take it.
Fitz, what do you make of Pickens? Interestingly, there's not a lot of good comparisons for him in terms of his value on the chart. The numerical values of 43. At the running back position, we actually have a bit of a gap between running back 20 and running back 21. He would fall right in the middle of that gap between Christian McCaffrey and Chuba Hubbard, but we have him valued as clearly behind CMC, but clearly ahead of Hubbard there. And then looking at tight ends, the equivalent guy is George Kittle, which is a tough comparison to make because Kittle is going to be so dependent on, like, if you're a contender and, need the tight end position filled, like, that's not a move you're going to make. So it's a lot more roster and league dependent, I think. So there's not a ton of great comps outside of just looking at the other receivers around him. So he's kind of right next to Brandon Ayuk. He's just behind Matthew Golden, Jameson Williams, Jerry Jeudy. He's just ahead of Luther Burden. Does this feel right for Pickens to you, Fitz?
I'm almost in physical discomfort right now talking about George Pickens because I think he is like one of the hardest players to evaluate and appraise for Dynasty or for even redraft. Like he is just a riddle wrapped in an enigma. Like this guy, like the contested catch artistry is just sublime. But like, is he kind of a one-trick pony? Can he beat defenders with his route running? But like, yeah, he is amazing at high pointing the ball. He has got some serious just eye-hand coordination. He is really strong at the catch point. Pretty tough to bring down after the catch too. But man, like even among NFL wide receivers, the diva class, and we know like almost every NFL wide receiver is a diva. Like George Pickens is a mega diva. Like he stands out. I just wonder if his like attitude issues are such that they might actually derail his career.
It did for Deontay Johnson. Like Deontay Johnson is still a talented wide receiver, but he's such a jerk.
Yeah,
I
so
don't
I
want him on the team.
and like, what does it look like? What is his target outlook now with CeeDee Lamb, who obviously is a fantastic player. So, I I don't know. I don't know what to make of George Pickens, and, like, I wouldn't even know how to go about trying to make a trade offer for him because, he's just so hard to put a price tag on.
I think the nice thing is that people rostering Pickens, I feel like they're with you, Fitz. So it's either like they're in a camp. They're either there's no way I'm trading this guy. He's played with crappy quarterbacks in a bad system for a long time. Let me see what he does. Or they're like, yeah, take him. I don't
Yeah.
want him. He's a number 2 now. Dak's always hurt, and I think he's going to be out of the NFL in a couple of years. So I do think that it's either like a straight Dikembe, no, or yeah, give me a bucket of baseballs. I'll take him.
Let's ask Worm this. Worm, do you think Pickens' value in Dynasty increased or decreased with the trade from Pittsburgh to Dallas?
I would say increased.
I tend to think so too. But the perception, I think, among some people is that it decreased because the target outlook is diminished going from the number 1 receiver. Well, see, I don't think he would have been number 1 anymore anyway with DK Metcalf there.
Yeah, it's a better quarterback. It's still really a 2-man receiving room. And I know CD is better, so he will soak up more targets than like a DK Metcalf, but he also will get the full attention of the defense. So maybe that opens things up for Pickens, who I think is probably best suited to be a strong number 2 anyway.
They still
So
don't have a strong run game in Dallas either. So they're going to
yeah,
be pass heavy, whereas Pittsburgh has built everything to run the ball.
I
So
think I might just be opting out of George Pickens this year, and I want to be clear that is different than saying I'm fading him. I'm not saying
Right.
he's like ranked too high. I think it's just I don't want to ride the roller coaster. I don't want to have to decide if I'm like I don't want to be right or wrong on Pickens. I just want to
Right.
kind of
But
let that be somebody else.
ultimately, that means you're out, though. That it is a little
Right.
fence sitting, but it means you're out.
Yeah, it's out, but I can see the path to him being successful. Like it's
Of
because
course,
some guys
yeah.
I'm out where I'm like, no, I think this is a mistake that he's ranked there. I'm out because he could be good, but it's not worth it to me trying to figure it out. I
Yeah.
guess is maybe the better way to put it.
And by the way, I want that Pickens jersey. I love the Steelers uniforms. And fun fact about me, when I was a kid, I always wore number 14 in baseball or basketball.
Hey,
That
look
was
at
What was
that.
that
was
for?
my
Was there
number.
a player you were honoring with that? Or
I was just born on the 14th, and I just liked wearing the number for whatever reason. Like stuck with it. Couldn't wear it in football because I was a chubby offensive lineman. But
Bogman, what number were you playing sports growing up?
A 36 usually. The bus.
that
So.
is nice.
I was a few different ones. I liked 5 growing up just because of Brooks Robinson. I liked wearing 24
Brooks
when I
Robinson, when
could.
you grow up in the 60s?
I love Brooks, dude. Like Brooks was like he's Mr. Oriole, like he's
The
my favorite
O.
player. I have like a big like montage of Brooks Robinson painted onto my childhood bedroom wall.
What
Like
number was Ripken? Was he 8?
Ripken was 8. See, nowadays 8 would be good because Cal and Lamar.
Lamar too. Yeah.
I liked being 24 a lot just because I liked the TV show 24. So I was always trying to be 24. But my baseball jersey in high school was 30 because that was just what was available. So I was 30 for a few years as well. So
36
kinda
for
mixed it up a
Bettis
lot.
before Bettis 26 for Rod Woodson.
Yeah. Fitz, Calvin Ridley is your wide receiver that you disagree with.
Yeah, we have his numerical value at 28. That's 4 points lower than Josh Downs' value. I'd rather have Ridley straight up. Ridley has the same value as 2 tight ends, one young, one old, Mason Taylor and Evan Engram. I'd rather have Ridley. Like I think he's more valuable than those guys. Even Taylor, who's just starting his career, and that's their non-tight end premium value, by the way. So just as you mentioned earlier, where we now have tight end premium value. So be sure to check that out if you play in a TE Premium Dynasty League. But Ridley has the same value as Tyrone Tracy. I think Ridley is probably the more stable asset in Dynasty. Like he's under contract with the Titans for 3 more years. He's really well positioned for the short term since he's clearly the alpha receiver in Tennessee, at least for the moment, unless, my guy Alec Manor lights it up in year 1. And the Titans just spent the number 1 overall pick on a quarterback who's pretty aggressive when it comes to throwing downfield, Cam Ward. So Ridley's had a couple straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and he's only 30. So he should have at least 2 or 3 more productive seasons left. I just think we're a little light on his value.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. It's not I can't imagine really banging the table for like, oh, Calvin really needs to be 30 spots higher. But I think you're right that ultimately, in terms of just strict, like, is this a properly valued? It probably is a bit too low. Bogman, do you see it the same way?
I have him exactly at his trade value chart ECR. I have him at 50. So I kind of see him as right on target, but I do have him in a big group of like, I don't know, like if you want to take Calvin Ridley over some questions, like I have Keon Coleman ahead of him. I understand that. I have Higgins ahead of him. If you want to take Ridley ahead of him just because you don't know the risk on Higgins, that's fine. Ayuk, Jerry Judy. I'm low on Judy, I know, but like I don't know. This is kind of a big glut of wide receivers. It's like, what is your flavor, right? Do you want to take all upside and go with a guy that like Debo, who just got traded for, and maybe he's going to get a bunch of touches, or Calvin Ridley is a number one in Tennessee for the next 2 years, most likely. So just go with the steady Eddie. At this point when you're drafting him, I think he is underrated, but I think a lot of these guys could be underrated for different reasons. Ridley just straight up is underrated, right? Like, he's going to be the number one this year. But if they find someone to throw the ball in Indy, Michael Pittman could be good. If Keon Coleman takes a leap, he could be really good with Josh Allen. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I think this group could be mixed up a bunch of different ways, but that's why, like, even if I'm low or high on a guy, looking at wide receiver values, my value isn't as far off as you would think just in terms of rank. So Ridley's one of those guys to me. So I think he is just undervalued for this season and next season. Beyond that, I just don't know what to expect from him.
He shouldn't be controversial. He should be on contending rosters, and if you
Right.
are in a rebuild mode, you should be tying him to your fishing hook and
Well,
casting him into the water.
what's interesting about Ridley to that point, Fitz, is I feel like a lot of the guys that fall under that umbrella that you just described, it's a lot more clear that they're going to be really good now, like difference makers for you right now. And it's just, okay, the age. Like Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, we have inside the top 20 at the position because we know they're going to be really good. We just are worried about the longevity. A guy like Devontae Adams and Mike Evans, they're back-to-back. They're higher than Calvin Ridley because we are reasonably confident that those guys are still going to be really good. It's just we don't know how long they have. Ridley is kind of the rare. He's a guy on the wrong side of 30 who I don't think we see as having wide receiver one upside even in his best year, yet still does feel undervalued and is a win now guy, even if he's win now as more of a, I'd be really happy if he was my wide receiver 4
Such
as
a weird
opposed to a win
career.
now wide receiver 1 or 2.
He has had a weird career, and I feel weird advocating for him now because I was sort of fading the Ridley mania of like 4
Same.
years ago.
Yeah.
And like that worked out well, and now hopefully I'm getting on the bandwagon at the right time.
By
Yeah, he's
now,
just 70 catches, 1,000 yards, and 5 scores, right? Like that's Riz. I didn't mean to step on you, Worm.
no, you're good. I was about to talk about Reality Sports Online, but I realized I didn't really ask about the rest of the position. So any just quick thoughts on the rest of the receivers, just in the value chart, Bogman?
Yeah, I mean, I have some of those guys I mentioned. I'm just a little bit higher on, and like I said, it's just not a ton of points because there's so many good wideouts. It's like, I think Addison is probably one of the biggest ones. I have him at wide receiver 16. Currently, he's wide receiver 25. So I have him as a firm in the middle of the pack of wide receiver 2s versus wide receiver 3 high end. Same deal with Waddle. I have him a little bit higher. Guys, you guys know I like Downs and Keon Coleman. I think I'm a little bit higher. Quentin Johnston, I came up a little bit higher. I think the overcorrection. He's wide receiver 87 on this list. I don't know that he needs to be that low. I have been like wide receiver 64. Then just overvalued guys, a lot of rookies. I think Tet is way overvalued right now, and I like Tet. I think
Uggs,
he's way over.
did you find some sort of surgeon to give Quentin Johnston a hand transplant or something?
No, but look, if the hands are just like 25% better, everything else is pretty good. The guy can definitely get open.
If we can go from frying pans to tennis rackets,
That's right.
we're cooking.
That's right. Like, so he's worth more than like, right now on our chart, he's worth 10 points, which is, free. I think he's worth a little bit more than that. Like, I don't know. He's below Ty Felton. And, so let's start a fight with Worm. Who would you rather have, Fitzy? Would you rather have Quentin Johnston or Ty Felton?
At this point, Felton, honestly.
And
Thank
that's
you.
fine, but they're 21 spots difference.
Yeah.
I don't think they're that different.
I mean, the drafting of Trey Harris was a big thumbs down for Quentin Johnston from that organization, like his own organization.
It was, but he's probably still going to be on the field. He's the third wide receiver still. So I don't know. Like I think just in terms of dart throw, look, who cares about Quentin Johnson? By the way, he's wide receiver 87. I'm just saying some of these guys, like I have 21 spots different.
He's behind two guys who aren't even on teams right now: Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper.
Those guys are going to sign somewhere, presumably.
I mean, I think so, but we're in June and they haven't yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would probably still take those guys, right? Even for one season, but Quentin Johnson's more than a nothing. That's all I'm saying. I think Besh is a little overrated. Currently, wide receiver 45. I'm at 55. I think that's a little bit high. I'm a little bit lower on Jerry Jeudy. I'm way lower on McMillan. I think McMillan got killed by Buka going there, and Godwin coming back, by the way. So I think that stinks for him. Cedric Tillman, I'm a little bit lower on, but it's mainly just rookies. I think are being valued a little bit too high. I'm lower on Tet. I'm lower on Hunter. I'm lower on Egbuka than the consensus says. And apparently, I raised Ricky Pearsall a lot, but I didn't get him to wide receiver 28. I am at 36. Still a wide receiver 3 to me, but I think we're a little bit high on Pearsall, but I don't want to kill him twice. I was so wrong about him last year.
Fitz, any other quick thoughts on the receiver position as a whole?
Not really. It's weird. I think our values are super tight and spot on at running back and wide receiver. And for some reason, I think the onesie positions, it's almost hard to come up with these values. Like I had more issues at quarterback and tight end than I did collectively with running back and wide receiver, even though there are a lot more players listed at those two positions.
Same.
By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, guys, we'll wrap up with the tight end discussion. We already talked a bit about how we have these tight end premium values now. So like Fitz said, I would highly encourage everybody to check that out if that's the type of league you play in. Obviously, it makes somebody like Brock Bowers look even better than he did before. We were talking Bogman on the Discord show earlier this week about how Bowers in tight end premium is now basically, he's ranked ahead of every running back. He's ranked ahead of, or at least tied with or ahead of every receiver except for Chase and Jefferson. He's tied with Lamb and Neighbors in that value. And then, of course, there's, 8 or so, I forget the exact number, 11 quarterbacks in Superflex ahead of him, but that's, very strictly.
Hey, look, I assume if you're listening to this show, it's because Fitz and I told you to draft Bowers and you believed us and it worked for you and you still love us for it. So that's what we assume here.
Well, I was saying, Bogman, if I was in a startup and it was tight end premium, that I don't think I would let Bowers get past pick 6. I think that elite trio of quarterbacks at the top, Jane Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, are going ahead. Assuming it's Superflex also, of course. Those guys are going ahead. Jamar Chase is going ahead. I would probably have Bowers 5th, but I totally, I would be back and forth on him versus Justin Jefferson. But I even in Superflex, I don't think I would take, Mahomes or Burrow, maybe, Herbert. In tight end premium, I just think the gap is so wide on with Bowers and everybody else. And he's so good and he's so young that I just you're going to have such an advantage at that position for the next 12 years. I want that guy locked up in that scoring format. Do you think that's fair or is that too aggressive?
I think it might be a touch aggressive, right? Just because tight end is a brutal position as well. Like Brock Bowers isn't your typical inline, taking the brutality of most tight ends. So maybe his career last longer, like Kelsey, right? Kelsey lined up in the slot a ton, way more, later in his career as well. So, I think that maybe it's a touch aggressive because of the career arc of a tight end, but in terms of the talent, no, it's not aggressive at all. That's, these guys are getting extra points, and Bowers is the best with a bullet, right? So I would say Trey McBride is closer. I think he's closer than Fitzy, but I wouldn't put him in Bowers' group either. So Bowers has to go really high. Superflex, maybe not top 6, but the third highest player in a tight end premium non-superflex is not surprising.
For McBride, Fitz, and we'll get to the guys that you guys picked as kind of the wrong values in a second, but I really want to highlight these two because they're so kind of apart from the rest. There's not that wide a gap between McBride and Laporta in tight end premium, but I see it as a clear tier. Would McBride in a startup where it was tight end premium, like second round pick, mid, early, late second round? What sounds right to you, Fitz?
Yeah, mid-second, I think.
Bogman?
That seems about right.
So we're going in tight end premium non-super flex.
No, super flex tight end premium.
Yeah, third round, third
down
or
to
fourth.
third. Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely would be higher on him than you, Bogman, because in the tight end premium, I would just kind of want to lock that up.
I just have so many quarterbacks if it's a super flex,
which is fair. Yeah, for me, it's just more a philosophical thing. Whereas, like, it's almost like it's not easy to find quarterbacks in a super flex, but it's damn near impossible to find tight ends in any format. So in tight end premium, I just want to get.
Let me push you here. Drake London or Trey McBride?
In a true full tight end premium, I would go Trey McBride, but I really like London, obviously.
Yeah. McBride or Nico?
I think I might. I see those as pretty equivalent. I think I would take McBride because that's the way I like to build a roster, but I think I might rank Nico higher.
What about Brian Thomas?
I would take Thomas.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the line. That's about end of the second in terms of my ranking.
The tight end premium value bump is about 20%. It varies depending on how, like the tight ends who score a lot of touchdowns. It might be less for them, but guys like Bowers, who had 112 catches last year, I think his bump was above 20%. So it's significant, but it's not you can go overboard with it. And I think sometimes people go overboard with that. I see that in the Scott Fishbowl every year where people draft tight ends really, really aggressively for tight end premium. And
outside of the top group too, the performances are very inconsistent. It's not 5 for 50 every game.
Right. Well, you say, oh, we got a bigger bump for Bowers because he had 112 catches. McBride had 111 catches last year.
Right.
So, I mean, again, the touchdowns were the only thing that was missing. So, and Fitz, you are on this point with a lot of players. Sometimes guys just it's never going to happen, right? The touchdowns, some guys just don't operate as well in the end zone, or the team doesn't look to them, or for whatever reason, just because a guy should have had more touchdowns, it feels like, given his production, doesn't always mean that they will. I don't know if McBride kind of falls into that bucket or not.
I'm reluctant to confirm his tight end allergy, even though it goes all the way back to Colorado State, where he had 1,000 yards in his final college season and didn't score his first touchdown.
It's the only place they could stop him. I mean, Colorado State was such a ridiculous team. They had nobody on this team except Trey McBride, and he still went out there.
He almost went without a touchdown in his 1,000-yard final season in college. Got his first touchdown the last game of his.
The only place they could stop him was the end zone. That's it. They couldn't stop him between the 20s to save their lives. So maybe he has a little bit of that, but I gotta think that's a little more Kyler than it is Trey McBride.
Let's get to the guys you disagree with in the tight end rankings before we wrap up. Fitz, who do you have?
TJ Hockenson. I think he's overvalued on our chart a little bit. We have a value of 41 for him, and that's higher than the values we have for veteran receivers like Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, and higher than some values for rookie receivers, Luther Burden, Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins. I'd rather have all those guys than Hawk. Hawkinson's going into his age 28 season. He's had a major knee injury, torn ACL and MCL in late 2023. Boggs just talked about the brutality of the position, and Kirby Joseph for Detroit. Keep your head on a swivel when Kirby Joseph is around, because that guy likes to tackle low. Like Hockenson is sharing targets with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and the targets are coming from a guy who, I'm optimistic about JJ McCarthy, but he has not started an NFL game. And while Hockenson is like undeniably good, his highest single season touchdown total is 6. So I just think he's overvalued a bit on our chart.
Bogman?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have him overvalued in terms of his position. I have him exactly at 7. But who are the names that you just listed off there, Fitz? I think I have Hockenson below all those guys. Who were they?
Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden, Trey Harris.
Yeah, I don't have, I'm a little lower on Adams because I just think this could be it for him. But I think everybody else I have him below. So Hockenson, good. I love this offense, but this is why I'm so high on Jordan Addison, right? We just talked about it. I have Addison at 16. I think Addison is a legit talent. I think he'd be number 1 and higher on a lot of boards if he didn't have Justin Jefferson next to him in a lot of scenarios. But I think Addison is great, and I think he's just going to get better. So if Addison's getting better and Justin Jefferson is hitting he's in the peak of his career right now, Hawkinson's getting banged up, a little long in the tooth. I don't know. I have him at 7, but it's not like a super confident 7. So I'm with Fitz on this one for sure.
Who do you disagree on, Bogman?
Jake Ferguson. I know this upset Fitzy too, but I just think that Fergie is a bit overrated, and it's because the Cowboys haven't had a number 2 target since he arrived, right? They drafted Schumacher in the 2nd round in 23. We saw him kind of come out of his shell last season. They added George Pickens this year. I think the running game might get better. It is still not the strength for this team, but it might get better with Javonte and Jaden Blue back there. And, Ferguson's fine as a tight end, but I think at tight end 17, I have him closer to 21. Who I really wanted to put in here was I wanted to put Pat Freiermuth as underrated, but with all these Jonnu Smith rumors, I don't think I can do that right now. But I think for Fergie, it's just, what is he going to be with Pickens on this team now, right? He's going to be the 4th option at best on a play-in, play-out basis. It's going to be running back, Lamb, Pickens, right? Those are your top 3. And Schumacher got way more blocking snaps last season. So Fergie's coming off the field a little bit more. Didn't score a touchdown last year, as we mentioned, 5 the year before that. So he's not like doesn't have a nose for the end zone. I don't know. Schumacher also 7 of 8 on contested catches. Ferguson in his career 19 for 39, less than 50% as a tight end. I don't really like that. So I don't know. Ferguson's just not a special talent. And I think we need to recognize that with a team that is adding talent. So I think Ferguson's just a little overvalued, specifically in your premium leagues.
Fitz, which tight end with the last name of Ferguson would you rather have in Dynasty, Jake or Terrence?
Let's see how I have them ranked. And first of all, I have to apologize to our producers because we're gonna have to make this a double episode now that Bogman has besmirched Wisconsin football, and not just Wisconsin football, but the grandson of Barry Alvarez he's dissing here. So I'm gonna have to dig up some Texas Longhorn names to peg as being overvalued for Dynasty. But in all seriousness, let's see. I have them really close. I have Jake Ferguson, tight end 17, Terrence Ferguson, tight end 19. And I think that's probably a minority opinion. I think most people would prefer Terrence at this point.
What you described is how it lines up in the chart itself too. Jake at 17, Terrence at 19.
All right.
I have Terrence at 18 and Jake at 24.
But no, I actually agree with Bogman, and I might need to move Jake down a couple of spots. Ferguson was a top 10 fantasy tight end in 2023, but last year, yes, he did miss 3 games with injuries, but 59 catches, 494 yards, 0 touchdowns. And, maybe the touchdown luck reverses itself this year.
Yeah, sure.
Ferguson only averaged 5.7 yards per target last year. Like that's a pretty bad number. And I know Dak Prescott missed half the year, but still, I think Ferguson's serviceable, but probably not as valuable as his numerical value in our chart suggests.
I was looking at grades yesterday, Fitz, and I think there were like 48 graded tight ends, in terms of snaps and all that. And he was 43rd in ADOT. And even his teammate Schumacher was 26 in ADOT. So he just doesn't get down the field either. Short catches. He's not breaking them for huge ones. His yards per route run, he was 31st. Schumacher was 23rd in yards per route run from the position. Schumacher's a better blocker, so they're going to ask him to do that more than Fergie. So Fergie's still going to catch passes, and he'll have more than 0 touchdowns for sure. And he might have some explosive games because the middle of the field's open with both those good wideouts on the perimeter. But I don't know, man. I just think that he was looked at second his first 2 years because it just didn't have a good wide receiver next to him. I think he's fourth on the pecking order now, and Tolbert was pretty good at the end of the year last year as well.
Since we're going long anyway, I just have to say I'm looking at the rankings, also not just the trade value chart. I'm looking at Isaiah Likely. Why does Debro have him tight end 29? That is like laughably low to me. I mean, Erickson's got him 13th. Fitz has got him 10th. At least as of the most recent rankings. He's
I got him at
15 chart. Like in the teens is reasonable. 29th. I don't know. I mean, Likely is 25 years old. Next year he will not be in the same tight end room as Mark Andrews. I don't think. I whether or not the Ravens keep Andrews or Likely, I really don't think they're keeping both, and I think they're likely to keep Likely, given the age difference. So, like, I think a year from now that's going to look really, really shockingly low.
And I think Likely has played 9 games where Mark Andrews hasn't played because of injury, and in those 9 games, like if you take the numbers Likely put up in those 9 games and prorate them over a full 17-game season, it works out to like 850 yards and 11 touchdowns.
Jeez.
Yeah, he's a locked-in top 8 tight end if Andrews is not in the picture.
Right. Yeah, you rank him in the top 10 if Mark Andrews is out.
He's very dynamic. Like, I don't. And again, because we're looking redraft, yes, Andrews should be ahead of him. But looking at it from a dynasty perspective, like, I would rather have Likely.
I'll say this for Debro. He did not like Isaiah Likely going in. Hated his guts. But, and he's not come off that. So
we've seen 3 seasons of him looking awesome when Andrews isn't on the field. So I think Debro is wrong. We'll go ahead and wrap up there. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this supersized episode, running through the Dynasty trade value chart. We hit on every position, a lot of guys we disagree with, and some other thoughts on every position for Bogman and Fitz. I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.